Hey guys, it's Tim Miller from the Bulwark. Donald Trump this morning gave his first long-form media interview with Meet the Press since he won the election back in November. And I wanted to go over a couple of the key points, the key things that I took away from that. Obviously, the big news from that interview was how Donald Trump said, I guess, multiple members of Congress should be jailed.
And Cheney was behind it. And so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did.
Yeah.
Honestly, they should go to jail.
We had a separate video on that. Go check that out if you missed it with Sam Stein and Andrew Egger, and make sure to subscribe to the feed. But I wanted to go over a couple of the other things that struck me from the interview as far as news-making items and actual potential policy implications. So the first one that really jumped out at me as far as actual actionable policy was how much Donald Trump was talking about extending the Trump tax cuts when it came to the economy. During the campaign, and even in the post-campaign, there has been all this focus on the tariffs, the threats of tariffs, the 25% threat of tariff to Canada and Mexico, that was going to be the big economic solution.
I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich.
He had some of these gimmicks on the campaign trail, like no tax on tips, et cetera, et cetera. And he would say that he wanted to extend the Trump tax cuts. But speaking about the emphasis, to me, what I think was clear is that he's been talking to Mike Johnson and John Thune and the congressional leaders and realizing, coming to terms with the fact that like the thing that they might be able to pass with their very narrow majorities is a tax bill. Now, there's some really dorky reasons about this, something called reconciliation, where you don't need the 60-vote threshold in the Senate for certain budget bills. And so the tax bill is much easier to get through reconciliation than say, some sort of immigration legislation or something that it doesn't have to do with the budget. And so it seems like that reality is settling in.
Going to be extending within that period or as soon as we can, the Trump tax cuts, because, they're coming due and they're very substantial for people. And it would be I think it will anger a lot of people, frankly, if we don't get an extension of that. We'll be submitting in either the first or second package to Congress the extension of the tax cuts. So that might very well be in there, or it'll come sometime after that.
I think it's interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, I think that's going to be a lot tougher to pass than they realize. There are a lot of like niche tax issues, things like the SALT reduction, which is a tax reduction for people that live in high in states with high state income tax. You've got some of these like the New York Republican congressman, the California Republican congressman. They might have different views on that. There's going to be issues about spending cuts, how to offset the tax cuts with spending cuts that some Republicans are going to have on the Hill, and with such a narrow majority, that could end up becoming a boondoggle that really derails a lot of the first few months of the presidency. So that's something to watch. The other thing about this is, again, the Trump tax cuts were mostly for, disproportionately for high income people, and so passing a tax cut extension is potentially inflationary. It is potentially, almost certainly going to be budget busting, depending on what happens over at Doge. But there's just not a lot of places, realistic places to cut. We'll be doing more videos on that. And again, it's helping high income people. So this whole like pitch from the campaign, the populist pitch, the move away, from kind of positioning himself as one of the Chamber of Commerce Republicans to this more MAGA working class populism based around tariffs, based around reducing costs, reducing inflation. Extending the tax cuts for the wealthy is not going to do any of that. And he is putting himself in a situation where he's got all these billionaires in the cabinet. He's got Elon Musk around, and he's going to be pushing through this tax cut that for the wealthy. So we will see on how exactly that all shakes out. But to me, I think that on the substantive matters of actual policy and not just Trump's rhetoric, like that really jumped out at me. A couple other things jumped out at me on actual policy. The discussion of RFK at HHS.
Let me ask you about RFK Jr. He has obviously talked about his skepticism of vaccines. He's expressed opposition to childhood vaccines. Do you want to see childhood vaccines eliminated?
If they're dangerous for the children. Look.
So possibly?
When you look at some of the problems, when you look at what's going on with disease and sickness in our country, something's wrong.
Are you talking about autism?
Well, if you take a look at autism, you go back 25 years, autism was almost non-existent. It was, 1 out of 100,000. And now it's close to 1 out of 100.
Well,
I mean, what's happening?
Trump got right up against basically being open to the vaccines cause autism conspiracy. Him and Kristen Welker go back and forth where Trump's talking about how they didn't have this much autism 25 years ago. There have been huge studies related to this, has been looked into extensively. So I don't need to go into that here. But to me, I just at one point he says that RFK is not going to totally restructure everything. It's not going to be this radical overhaul.
I think a lot of good things are going to come from him, and he's not going to upset any system. He's not going to upset this. He's not looking to reinvent the wheel totally.
He tries to kind of downplay it a little bit, but in the same breath, he's talking about, look, if they're going to look into childhood vaccines, they should look into that, and maybe there'll be changes. So I just think that the likelihood that there's new federal government guidance around childhood vaccines, that there's new, potentially limits on that, or that there are, limits on whether you can mandate it for certain things. I think that that is pretty alarming. And based on this interview, it seems like Trump is kind of going to let RFK do his deal on that, and that's anti-vax conspiracy theorizing. So I think that will be interesting to monitor. The other, less on the policy, but on actual news item from the interview, his discussion of releasing the January 6th prisoners, the people that are in jail for their assault on the Capitol on behalf of Donald Trump.
First day.
Yeah,
I'm looking first day.
Issue these pardons.
These people have been there. How long is it? 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
He said to Welker that he plans to do that day one, that there'll be pardons for, it seems to me, the overwhelming majority of them. You kind of left the door open to looking at specific cases, and maybe some won't be pardoned, but he specifically responds to the question about even those that attacked police. So, we've got this supposedly working class, supposedly back the blue party, and the first priorities are going to be pardoning and releasing from prison people that attacked police, and extending tax cuts for high income earners. Not very I guess it's MAGA in the sense that these prisoners are MAGA, but it's certainly, for working class people that bought into the kind of pro-cop, lower prices messaging. I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening with what is happening early on in this administration. So those three items, the taxes, RFK, and the January 6th protesters, were the things that stood out to me. It's a very wide-ranging interview. He went through all the immigration stuff, a lot of what we'd already heard from them on immigration, as far as the plans for deportations, focusing on criminals. But he uses the same line that he's used many times about how, there's going to be a situation where the criminal's wife, who's a mother, who's a very nice person, gets deported too, and the media will be up in arms about that, but that's just what you have to do. So the plans continue apace on immigration. Comically, at the end, he talks about his inauguration speech and how this one will not be about American carnage, will be about unity.
What do you want to say to Americans who didn't support you in this campaign?
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country.
Fascinating that in the same interview where he said he wants to have a unity theme, he said that he wanted Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff and Benny Thompson jailed. So, unity is in the eye of the beholder, I guess. He went through a defense of Pete Hegseth, a defense of his nominees as well. So much there. There'll be more to discuss. I'll be discussing at greater length with Bill Kristol tomorrow. But wanted to get you guys the highlights because hopefully most of you didn't suffer through it because, it's not a great watch having to watch Donald Trump for an hour. But good on Kristen Welker, wide-ranging interview, covered a bunch of stuff. And I think that, the highlights are, it will be interesting to be seen how much of the populism of the Trump message gets undermined by the reality of his billionaire cabinet and the Republicans on the Hill who want their tax cut. That's going to be something that we're going to be continuing to monitor over the next weeks and months. Make sure to subscribe to the feed. Tell your friends. We'll see you soon. Peace. Hey, if you like this video and our content, I'd love for you to become a Bulwark Plus subscriber. You get access to bonus podcasts, secret podcasts, and newsletters we put out every day, plus some behind-the-scenes takes that I don't always post on this feed. In addition, you can become part of the Bulwark community. Come over to our Substack and comment and meet other like-minded people. We'd love to have you. Starting today, you can get a free trial at thebulwark.com/free trial. The link is right here on the screen and below in the description. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Come on and give it a free try today.